Ambassador Keiko Tanaka walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Council headquarters for the last time. Her footsteps echoed against the crystalline floors that stretched higher than any cathedral on Earth. Above her, the domed ceiling displayed a live view of the cosmos, with hundreds of stars representing the member worlds of the Council. Soon, one small yellow star would go dark. She carried a single data tablet in her hands. 2 centuries of human service to the galaxy, reduced to a formal withdrawal notice. The council chamber bustled with activity as usual. The Zaros delegation, tall and covered in ceremonial armor, argued loudly with the insectoid Chithar about trade route priorities. The Methodians floated in their meditation spheres, their crystalline bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns. The aquatic deep reach representatives bubbled in their mobile water tanks, their translators converting clicks and whistles into galactic common tongue. No one noticed Keiko enter. Humans had been part of the council for 200 years, and still, they went unnoticed. She waited patiently for the session to begin. Patience was something humans had learned well during their time here. They had learned to wait for acknowledgement that rarely came, to accept assignments others refused, to smile politely when their contributions were overlooked. Council Speaker Tharn, a massive being whose species had founded the council 3,000 years ago, finally called the session to order. His 4 eyes scanned the assembly with the bored confidence of someone who had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. "Minor business first," Tharn announced, his voice rumbling through the translation systems. "Are there any administrative matters?" She had to raise it twice before Tharn noticed. "Ah, the human. Yes, what is it?" His tone suggested he had more important matters to attend to. "Humanity wishes to submit a formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Council," Keiko said clearly. She transmitted the document to the central database. The chamber didn't fall silent. In fact, most of the delegates didn't even pause their side conversations. A few glanced her way, with mild curiosity, the way one might notice a janitor announcing their retirement. Tharn's eye stalks twitched slightly. "Withdrawal? For what purpose?" "We're going home," Keiko replied simply. "We thank the Council for the opportunity to serve. We harbor no ill will and wish everyone well." One of the Methodian representatives, 7th of Contemplation, actually focused on the conversation. Her crystalline form pulsed with interest. "This is unexpected. Has humanity encountered difficulties with their assigned duties?" Keiko smiled softly. "No, 7th of Contemplation. We've simply decided it's time to return to our own space and focus on our own development." A Zeros warrior named Kethril laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "The humans are leaving? Who will maintain the waste reclamation systems in the outer stations?" "You'll have to find someone else," Keiko answered. "Our transition plan is in the withdrawal document. We'll maintain essential services for 90 days to give the Council time to make arrangements." Tharn waved a massive hand dismissively. "Very well. If you wish to isolate yourselves again, the Council will not stop you. Your withdrawal is acknowledged. We'll assign your duties to appropriate species." There was no argument, no attempt to convince them to stay. The Council simply accepted humanity's departure, the way one might accept a resignation from a low-level clerk. Keiko bowed respectfully and left the chamber. Behind her, the Council had already moved on to what they considered more important matters, a territorial dispute between 2 species whose names she'd never bothered to learn. As she walked back through those grand halls, Keiko thought about the last 200 years. She thought about the first human ships that had arrived in Council space, filled with hope and wonder. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel, and found they weren't alone in the universe. They'd encountered a vast civilization, spanning hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. The Council had welcomed them with polite indifference. Humans were unremarkable by galactic standards. They weren't particularly strong like the Zeros, not intellectually evolved like the Methodians, not long-lived like the Eternals, not spiritually enlightened like the Seekers. They were just average. But humans were willing to work. When the council mentioned that certain stations needed maintenance crews, humans volunteered. When trade routes needed coordinators who could work with multiple species, humans stepped forward. When someone needed to crawl into irradiated engine cores or sort through toxic waste, or manage the endless bureaucratic minutiae of a galactic civilization, humans did it. They did it because they wanted to prove themselves. They wanted to show the galaxy that humanity deserved to be there, that they could contribute, that they mattered. Keiko reached the human quarter of the station. It was a small section, easily overlooked, tucked away near the industrial zones. Human families lived here. Children who had been born among the stars. Workers who had spent their entire careers keeping the galaxy running. She found her team waiting in the common area. 50 humans, representing the last of their kind, stationed at council headquarters. Engineers, technicians, coordinators, translators, medical staff, sanitation workers, the invisible workforce. "It's done," she told them. 90 days, and we go home. A maintenance engineer named Marcus spoke up. Did they even ask why? No, Keiko said. I don't think it occurred to them that we might have a reason beyond simple preference. A young coordinator named Sarah laughed bitterly. 200 years. My grandmother worked here. My mother worked here. I've worked here my entire adult life, and they don't even know our names. They know our species, another human said, the ones who fix things when they break. They were tired, not physically, though the work was hard. They were tired in their souls, tired of being invisible, of being taken for granted, of watching their children grow up in a civilization that would never see them as equals. We gave them everything we had, Keiko said softly. We gave them our labor, our innovation, our dedication. We asked only to be treated as partners. Instead, we became their janitors. Will they manage without us? Someone asked. Seventh of Contemplation, who had quietly followed Keiko from the council chamber, spoke from the doorway. Her crystalline form shimmered. That is a question I have been contemplating. May I ask, why now? Why leave after 2 centuries? Keiko turned to face the Methodian. Of all the council species, the Methodians had been the closest thing to respectful. They at least occasionally said thank you. Because we finally understand something. We kept hoping that if we worked hard enough, if we proved ourselves valuable enough, the council would see us as equals. But that was never going to happen. Not because we aren't worthy, but because the council doesn't value the kind of work we do. You've all evolved beyond it, become too specialized, too proud. You need us, but you'll never respect us. So we're choosing to respect ourselves instead. Seventh of Contemplation pulsed thoughtfully. I fear you may be correct. I wish you well, Ambassador Tanaka. After the Methodian left, the humans began their preparations. 90 days to transfer knowledge, to document systems, to train whoever the council assigned to replace them. 90 days until they could finally go home. Keiko looked out the viewport at Earth's distant star. Humanity had left their world with such hope. They would return with something more valuable. Wisdom. 3 months after the last human ship left Council space, Station Keeper Vorn discovered the recycling system was broken again. He stared at the control panel with its flashing red warnings and felt something unfamiliar. Frustration mixed with helplessness. The waste reclamation system for Council Station 7 had failed for the 3rd time in as many weeks. Before the humans left, it never failed. When it did have problems, they were fixed within hours. Now, waste was backing up throughout the station, and no one knew what to do about it. Vorn submitted a maintenance request to the central system. The request joined a queue of 7,000 other pending maintenance issues across Council space. He checked the queue twice to make sure he was reading the number correctly. 7,000. 3 months ago, The queue had never exceeded 50 requests. On the other side of the galaxy, Trade Coordinator Jess reviewed shipping manifests with growing confusion. Cargo ships that should have arrived at the Methodian homeworld 3 days ago were still in transit. When he tracked their routes, he found they'd been sent to the wrong destination entirely. When he tried to correct the routes, he discovered that 17 other ships had been similarly misrouted. He called the central routing office and waited 40 minutes to speak with someone. Before, when humans ran the routing coordination, someone answered within seconds. "I need to speak with the routing supervisor," Jess said when someone finally answered. "I am the routing supervisor," replied a harried-sounding Chithar. "What's the problem?" 17 ships on the Outer Rim trade route have been misrouted. The correction algorithms aren't working properly. "I know," the Chithar said. "I have 200 flagged routing errors. I'm working through them as fast as I can." "How is that possible?" The humans used to run correction checks every 6 hours across all trade routes. They'd catch errors before ships even launched. "We're trying to do the same thing, but there were 20 humans doing this job. Now there's just me." "Can't the council assign more personnel?" The Chithar made a clicking sound that the translator rendered as bitter laughter. "Everyone is already assigned somewhere. Do you want to do routing coordination?" Jess did not. Routing coordination was tedious work that required constant attention to detail. It was the sort of thing beneath his status as a trade specialist. In the council chamber, arguments had become more frequent and more heated. Today, the Zeros and the Deep Reach were shouting at each other about station maintenance responsibilities. "Your species will handle the environmental controls," declared Kethril. "This is not work for warriors. Our species cannot breathe your atmosphere," bubbled the Deep Reach representative. "How can we maintain systems in environments we cannot enter?" "Then the Methodians will do it." The Methodians, floating in their meditation spheres, rippled with what might have been amusement or disdain. "Our consciousness has evolved beyond manual labor. We contemplate and guide. We do not repair." "Someone must do it," Kethril roared. "Stations are failing across the sector." Council Speaker Tharn tried to restore order, but even his booming voice was getting lost in the chaos. What had once been a dignified assembly was devolving into a marketplace argument. Seventh of Contemplation watched the proceedings with increasing concern. Unlike her fellow Methodians, she had developed a habit the others considered regressive. She paid attention to details, to small things, to the mundane functioning of daily life. It was why she'd noticed the humans before they left. It was why she was noticing the pattern now. After the session ended in another stalemate about who would handle what responsibilities, she began her own investigation. She accessed the Council's central database and started pulling records. Infrastructure maintenance logs, emergency response times, trade routing efficiency, station life support reliability, diplomatic message coordination, supply chain management, medical emergency response, environmental regulation compliance, safety inspection completion rates. Every metric was declining, some dramatically. She dug deeper, looking at historical data. For 200 years, these metrics had remained stable or improved. The decline began exactly 3 months ago. She pulled personnel records next. When she searched for who had been responsible for maintaining these systems, one species name appeared over and over. Human. 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 The waste reclamation systems across 400 stations, maintained by human engineering teams. The trade routing network spanning 700 inhabited worlds, coordinated by human logistics specialists. Emergency response dispatch for medical, fire, and safety crises, managed by human crisis coordinators. The complex translation and cultural mediation required to keep hundreds of species working together, handled by human diplomats. Seventh of Contemplation felt something she rarely experienced. Shock. The humans had been everywhere, doing everything, and no one had noticed. They'd been like the circulatory system of a living body, invisible until it stopped working. She expanded her search to understand how many humans had been working for the Council. The number surprised her. Nearly 50,000 humans spread across Council space, working in positions that other species considered beneath their dignity or outside their capabilities. She calculated how many personnel from other species would be needed to replace them. The number was staggering. It would require pulling workers from essential positions across the entire Council. And even then, most species weren't suited for the work. The Zaros would refuse anything they considered dishonorable. The Methodians couldn't do physical labor. The Deep Reach couldn't work in most environments. The Chithar were too specialized. The Eternals moved too slowly. The humans had been generalists in a galaxy of specialists. They could do anything, work anywhere, solve any problem. And they'd done it quietly, without complaint, without demanding recognition. Until they stopped. Seventh of Contemplation compiled her findings into a report. She submitted it to the Council leadership and requested an emergency session. 2 weeks later, she finally got her session. The Council chamber was half empty. Many delegates were away, dealing with crises on their homeworlds. She presented her data, charts showing the declining metrics, personnel records showing human involvement, projections showing what would happen if the trends continued. We are experiencing systemic failure across all Council operations, she concluded. The cause is the absence of human workers. They were maintaining systems we didn't even know needed maintenance. They were solving problems before we knew the problems existed. Tharn studied the data with his 4 eyes. Surely we can redistribute their responsibilities among existing species. We cannot, Seventh of Contemplation said. Most species cannot or will not do the work humans did. We've evolved too far into our specializations. We've become too proud to handle what we consider menial tasks. Kethril stood, his armor clanking. You suggest we need these weak, short-lived creatures? The Zaros need no one. Then will the Zaros clean waste recyclers, crawl through maintenance tunnels, coordinate logistics for species you refuse to speak with directly? Kethril said nothing. A Deep Reach representative bubbled urgently. Can we not simply automate these tasks? The humans tried to implement automation, Seventh of Contemplation replied. They found that most systems required judgment, adaptation, and problem-solving that automation couldn't provide. They were the automation, flexible, intelligent, tireless. The Council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. What do you recommend? Tharn asked finally. We have 3 options, Seventh of Contemplation said. We can learn to do this work ourselves, setting aside our pride and specialization. We can accept the decline of our civilization as systems continue to fail, or we can ask the humans to return. The silence deepened. The weight of 200 years of casual disregard pressed down on every delegate present. They had built a magnificent civilization on the backs of a species they'd never bothered to thank. And now that civilization was crumbling, and they had no one to blame but themselves. 6 months after the humans left, Station Orbital 5's life support system failed completely. The station housed 12,000 beings from 8 different species. By the time emergency teams arrived, 43 people had died from oxygen deprivation. The investigation revealed that the system hadn't been properly maintained in months. Warning sensors had been flagged for routine inspection. The inspections had never happened. The human engineering team that used to manage the station's environmental systems had left with everyone else. The Zaros assigned to replace them had considered the work beneath their warrior culture. The Mephidians assigned as backup had meditated on the problem, but never physically inspected anything. The maintenance checklist the humans had created and followed religiously for 120 years had been ignored. 43 people died because no one checked a filter. The news spread across council space like a wave of cold water. Suddenly, the missing humans weren't just an inconvenience. They were a crisis. On the Chithar homeworld, food shipments stopped arriving. The complex web of trade routes that fed the population had been coordinated by human logistics teams. Those teams had managed schedules, negotiated with different species, resolved conflicts, and kept goods flowing smoothly. Without them, ships arrived empty or didn't arrive at all. Cargo meant for the Chithar went to the Methodians. Supplies meant for medical facilities ended up at military bases. The routing system had collapsed into chaos. Food riots broke out in 3 major Chithar cities. The government blamed the council. The council blamed the shipping companies. The shipping companies blamed the lack of coordination infrastructure. Everyone was blaming someone else, because no one wanted to admit the truth. They'd all relied on humans to make everything work, and they'd never even realized it. At the Deep Reach diplomatic station, an emergency call came in from a mining colony. A reactor was melting down. Evacuate immediately. The emergency dispatcher tried to contact the nearest response teams. The communication system failed, not because of technical malfunction, but because the dispatcher didn't know the proper protocols for contacting 7 different species with different communication requirements. The humans who used to run emergency dispatch knew every species' contact requirements, language needs, and cultural considerations. They could coordinate complex multi-species responses in minutes. The new dispatcher was a well-meaning Eternal who moved and thought at 1/10 the speed humans did. By the time rescue ships were organized and dispatched, the mining colony had been completely destroyed. 320 people dead. The Galactic Council was bleeding from 1,000 small wounds. Systems that had run smoothly for centuries were breaking down. Trade routes failed. Emergency services arrived too late. Diplomatic messages got lost in translation, causing new conflicts. Maintenance backlogs grew exponentially. Safety inspections weren't completed. Environmental controls malfunctioned. And every species blamed every other species. The Zaros should handle security and safety, shouted the Chithar delegation. Warriors do not repair machines, Kefrel roared back. The Methodians have the intelligence. We have transcended such physical limitations, the Methodians responded calmly. Perhaps the Deep Reach. We cannot work in dry environments, bubbled the Deep Reach representative. The Eternals. We require contemplation time that these urgent matters do not allow, said the Eternal ambassador, their words slow and measured. Council Speaker Tharn watched his civilization tear itself apart. Species that had worked together for thousands of years were now at each other's throats. Ancient alliances were fracturing. Some species were threatening to withdraw from the council entirely. All because they couldn't agree on who should do the work humans had done without anyone asking. Seventh of Contemplation presented updated reports every week. Each one was worse than the last. The metrics she tracked, safety, efficiency, reliability, coordination, all continued their downward spiral. We are losing an average of 4 stations per month to critical system failures, she reported to a sparse council chamber. Many species were keeping their delegates home, protecting their own interests. Trade volume has decreased 40%. Emergency response times have tripled. Diplomatic incidents have increased 500% due to miscommunication and cultural misunderstandings. Surely we can learn to do this work ourselves, one of the Methodians said. We are intelligent beings. How difficult can these tasks be? Seventh of Contemplation pulled up a single maintenance checklist, the daily routine for one medium-sized station. It contained 347 separate inspection points, each requiring technical knowledge, physical capability, and judgment. It needed to be completed every single day. This is what 3 humans did each morning before their main duties began, she said. It took them 4 hours. Who among us can do this? Who will do this? We are a council of specialists. We've spent millennia perfecting our particular strengths. The Zaros perfected warfare. The Methodians perfected consciousness. The Deep Reach perfected their aquatic technology. The Eternals perfected long-term thinking, someone said. And the humans? The humans perfected being useful, Seventh of Contemplation said quietly. They could do anything, fix anything, learn anything, coordinate anyone. They weren't the strongest or the smartest or the most specialized. They were adaptable. They were willing. They saw work that needed doing and did it. Kethral's voice was unusually subdued. I remember when they first arrived. We thought them weak because they lacked our strength. We thought them simple because they didn't specialize. We confused their generalist nature for mediocrity, Seventh of Contemplation said. We mistook their willingness to do unglamorous work for inferiority. They were maintaining our entire civilization, and we treated them like servants. The truth was settling over the council like heavy gravity. They'd lost the connective tissue that held their civilization together. Several species had tried to fill the gaps. The results were disasters. Zaros warriors assigned to maintenance work quit after 2 days, calling it dishonorable. Methodians assigned to coordination roles meditated themselves into decision paralysis. Chethar translators could manage languages, but not cultural context, creating diplomatic incidents. Eternals worked too slowly for crisis response. Every species had an excuse for why they couldn't do what humans had done. Too proud, too specialized, too evolved, too slow, too incompatible. The real reason was simpler. They'd never had to. The humans had always been there, quietly handling everything. Private conversations began happening between council leadership. Conversations they didn't want broadcast to the public. Conversations about what couldn't be said aloud. That maybe the council needed the humans more than the humans had ever needed the council. Tharn called Seventh of Contemplation to a private meeting. His 4 eyes showed something she'd never seen before. Uncertainty. We cannot continue like this, he said. Our civilization is collapsing. Species are withdrawing. People are dying. We need solutions. There is only one solution, Seventh of Contemplation said. We must ask the humans to return. Tharn's massive form seemed to shrink slightly. They will demand much in return. They might, she agreed, or they might simply refuse. We spent 200 years demonstrating that we don't value them. Why would they believe we've changed? What choice do we have? Seventh of Contemplation had been contemplating that question for weeks. We could learn to do the work ourselves, set aside our specializations and pride. Become generalists like the humans. It would take time, decades perhaps, and it would require fundamental changes to how every species thinks about work and dignity. Or we admit that we built a magnificent civilization on the backs of people we never respected, and that civilization deserves to fall. Tharn was quiet for a long moment. Outside, through the chamber's great windows, a ship drifted past with its running lights flickering. Even the navigation systems were failing now. Send a delegation to Earth, he said finally, not to demand, to request an audience, to apologize. It was the first time Seventh of Contemplation had heard a council speaker use that word. Perhaps there was hope after all. Or perhaps the humans would teach them one final lesson, that some things, once broken, cannot be repaired. The council's first mistake was sending probes instead of delegates. Automated scout ships approached Earth's solar system 9 months after humanity's departure. They expected to find a single inhabited world, perhaps some basic defensive satellites. Instead, they found a defensive network that made them immediately reverse course. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a weapons platform. Mars showed signs of extensive terraforming and colonization. Stations orbited every planet and major moon. The moon itself bristled with installations the probe's sensors couldn't fully identify. And Earth, beautiful blue Earth, sat at the center of a defensive grid that would have challenged the combined military might of a dozen council species. The humans hadn't been idle during their time away. When the probes tried to approach closer, they received a polite but firm message. "This is Earth Space Command. You are entering human sovereign territory. State your business or turn back." The probes turned back. Their data caused chaos in the council chamber. "How did they build all this in 9 months?" demanded Kethral, studying the scans with a warrior's eye. "This level of fortification should take decades." Seventh of Contemplation had been analyzing the same data. "They didn't build it in 9 months. They built it over decades while they were working for us. Quietly, secretly. They were preparing for this." "Preparing for what?" asked the Chithar delegate. "For independence," she said. "They knew they would leave eventually. They were just waiting for the right moment." The realization spread through the chamber like ice water. The humans hadn't left suddenly. They'd planned it, prepared for it, built their defenses while working their shifts, maintaining council stations, fixing council problems. They'd been playing a long game, while the council didn't even realize a game was being played. "They deceived us," Kethral said, his voice dangerous. "Did they?" Seventh of Contemplation asked. "Did we ever ask what they were doing in their own space? Did we ever care about their homeworld or their development? We only cared about their work for us." The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Council Speaker Tharn made his decision. "We will send a proper delegation, not probes, representatives of the council. We will request an audience." "And if they refuse?" someone asked. "Then we will know where we stand." The delegation consisted of representatives from the 7 founding species of the council. Tharn himself would lead it. Seventh of Contemplation was included as a technical advisor. Kethral represented the Zaros. Each species sent their most senior diplomat. They traveled in the council flagship, an enormous vessel that had hosted peace negotiations and celebrated alliances for 1,000 years. It represented the full dignity and power of galactic civilization. When they approached Earth's system, they received another message. "Council delegation, you are cleared to approach. You will be escorted to Luna Station. Follow the designated path exactly. Any deviation will be considered hostile." Small human warships appeared around them. Fast, agile, bristling with weapons, they guided the massive council flagship like sheepdogs herding a whale. Kethral watched the human ships with professional appreciation. "They've learned warfare. These designs are efficient, dangerous." The council ship docked at Luna Station, and the delegation got their first look at what humanity had built. The station was huge, modern, and clearly designed for both commerce and military defense. Humans moved through it with purpose and confidence. They wore uniforms marking different services: military, merchant fleet, station operations, diplomatic corps. These weren't the tired maintenance workers the council remembered. These were people who knew their worth. Ambassador Keiko Tanaka met them in a formal reception hall. She looked the same, but carried herself differently. No more deference, no more patience for being ignored. She greeted them as equals, not as representatives of a superior galactic power, but as visitors to sovereign human space. "Welcome to Luna Station," she said formally. "The council's delegation is recognized. Please follow me." They were led through corridors that showed human art, human history, human achievement, their own. The meeting room overlooked Earth, that beautiful blue marble spinning in space. The council delegation found themselves staring at it, understanding for the first time that this world had been here all along, developing its own civilization while contributing to theirs. Keiko didn't waste time on pleasantries. "The council requested this audience. We've granted it. What do you want?" Tharn, who had presided over council sessions for 300 years, found himself uncertain how to begin. He'd never had to ask for anything before. Species came to the council. The council didn't beg. But he was begging now, whether he admitted it or not. The council recognizes that the departure of humanity has created difficulties, he said carefully. Difficulties, Keiko repeated. The word hung in the air. Is that what you call the deaths? The system failures? The collapse of your trade networks? We were unprepared for the scope of human involvement in council operations. You were willfully blind to it, Keiko corrected. We didn't hide what we did. We just did it quietly, and you never bothered to look. Seventh of Contemplation spoke up. She's right. I've reviewed the records. Humans filed reports, submitted documentation, requested resources. Everything was documented. We simply never read it, because we assumed it wasn't important. Kethro leaned forward. We acknowledge mistakes were made. The Council wishes to rectify them. We request that humanity return to Council space and resume your positions. Keiko laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Resume our positions? You mean go back to being your servants? The invisible workers you never thanked? We would offer better terms, Tharn said. Seats on the High Council, increased resource allocation, recognition of your contributions. Now you offer recognition, Keiko said. After we left. After your civilization started falling apart. You're not offering these things because you respect us. You're offering them because you're desperate. The council delegation shifted uncomfortably. The truth was harsh when spoken aloud. A human aide entered and whispered to Keiko. She nodded and stood. Excuse me a moment. There's something you should see. She activated a large display screen. It showed real-time feeds from across council space, stations operating on emergency power, trade ships stranded without proper routing, emergency response teams arriving too late, species arguing over responsibilities. The slow collapse of galactic civilization. We know your civilization is eating itself from the inside. Then you know we need your help, Tharn said. You need our labor, Keiko corrected. There's a difference. Help implies partnership. You want workers. You want us to fix your problems. You want everything to go back to the way it was, when you could take us for granted. What would it take for humanity to return? Asked the Chithar delegate, cutting through the diplomatic language. Name your price. Keiko turned from the screen to face them directly. That's the problem right there. You think this is about price, about negotiation, about what you can offer us to make us come back. Isn't it? Tharn asked. No, Keiko said quietly. It's about respect. It's about being valued. It's about partnership. Those things can't be bought. They can't be negotiated. They have to be freely given, and they have to be given before you need them desperately. We're offering them now, Kethril said. Too late, Keiko replied. You're offering them because you're desperate, not because you actually value us. If your systems weren't failing, if people weren't dying, if your civilization wasn't collapsing, would you be here? Would you even remember we existed? No one answered. They all knew the truth. Keiko continued. For 200 years we hoped. We worked hard, thinking that if we proved ourselves valuable enough, you'd see us as equals. We raised children in your stations, telling them that their work mattered, that they were building something important. We sacrificed our own development to help yours, and you never once said thank you. You never learned our names. You never cared. We care now, Seventh of Contemplation said softly. Because you have to, Keiko said, not because you want to. And that's why we can't come back. The council delegation sat in stunned silence. Through the windows of Luna Station, Earth rotated peacefully, unconcerned with the drama playing out above it. Tharn recovered first. 300 years of diplomatic experience forced him to try again. If humanity will not return to the council, perhaps we could negotiate a contract? We would pay for your services, establish formal agreements, provide compensation. You still don't understand, Keiko interrupted. She turned to a console and pulled up documents. Let me show you something. The screen displayed production statistics, development reports, resource surveys. While we were working for you, we were also working for ourselves. Every human working in Council space sent a portion of their salary home. Every engineer shared their knowledge with Earth. Every scientist contributed to our research. Every diplomat taught us about galactic politics. We took the technology you shared freely among Council species and adapted it. We improved it. We made it ours. We built our own ships, our own stations, our own infrastructure. We don't need the Council anymore. Not for technology, not for trade, not for protection. Kethral studied the military readiness reports with growing respect. You've built a formidable defense force. Because we had to, Keiko said. We knew the galaxy wasn't safe. We knew we couldn't rely on the Council to protect us. They barely remembered we existed. So we protected ourselves. What will humanity do now? Asked Seventh of Contemplation. Keiko smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. We're going to explore. There are parts of the galaxy the Council never reached, species you never contacted. We're going to meet them on our own terms, as equals from the start. We're going to build our own trade networks, our own alliances, our own future. Without the Council, Tharn said heavily. Without the Council, Keiko confirmed. You taught us an important lesson, Speaker Tharn. You taught us that we don't need to prove ourselves to anyone but ourselves, that our worth isn't determined by whether others recognize it, that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you. The Chithar delegate leaned forward desperately. People are dying. Surely humanity cares about that. For the first time, Keiko's composure cracked slightly. Pain flickered across her face. Of course we care. Do you think this decision was easy? Do you think we don't know what's happening out there? Every human who worked in Council space has friends among other species. People they worked alongside for years. People they care about. Then help them, the Chithar pleaded. By going back to being invisible servants? Keiko shook her head. No. You want to know what would really help? The Council learning to help itself. Learning to value the work that needs doing. Learning that no one is too important to clean a filter or check a safety system or coordinate a supply route. Our species have evolved beyond such tasks, a Methodian representative said. Then your species will fall, Keiko said bluntly. Evolution isn't just about becoming more specialized. Sometimes, it's about adaptability. Humans survived on Earth because we could adapt to anything. We could live in deserts and tundra, oceans and mountains. We could hunt and gather and farm and build. We were never the strongest or fastest or smartest. We were the most adaptable. She gestured at the Council delegation. You've all become so specialized that you can't function without others doing the basic work. That's not evolution. That's fragility. You've built a magnificent civilization on a foundation of sand, and now you're surprised it's collapsing. Seventh of Contemplation pulsed thoughtfully. What would you have us do? Learn, Keiko said. Adapt. Set aside your pride and do the work that needs doing. Train your people to be generalists. Value the unsexy, unglamorous tasks that keep civilization running. Stop seeing maintenance and coordination and logistics as beneath you. And if we do this, Tharn asked, if we change, would humanity reconsider? Keiko was quiet for a long moment. Maybe, in a generation or two, after you've proven the change is real and lasting, after you've learned to value work for its own sake, not because you're desperate, after you can meet us as genuine equals and partners. A generation, Kethral said. Thousands will die in that time. Thousands died when we were there too, Keiko said quietly. We couldn't prevent every accident, solve every problem, save everyone. We tried. We burned ourselves out trying, And you never noticed. You never thanked us. You never cared until we left. She stood, signaling the meeting was ending. We've given you our answer. Humanity will not return to the Council. Not now, maybe not ever. We're moving forward on our own path. What you do now is your choice. Just like that? Tharn asked. 200 years of partnership ended? Partnership? Keiko's voice hardened. We were never partners. Partners value each other. Partners see each other. Partners say thank you. We were employees at best, servants at worst. And now we've quit. The galaxy will go on. The Council will adapt or it won't. Either way, it's no longer our responsibility. A human child walked past the conference room window, laughing with friends. They were young people who had grown up on Luna, who had never known the exhaustion of working for Council species who didn't appreciate them. They were free. Seventh of Contemplation watched the children and understood. You're not punishing us. You're protecting them. The next generation. Keiko nodded. My grandmother worked for the Council. My mother worked for the Council. I worked for the Council. My daughter never will. She'll grow up knowing her worth isn't measured by whether aliens appreciate her labor. She'll build her own future, on her own terms. That's what we're protecting. The Council delegation was escorted back to their ship. The journey through Luna Station was different this time. They actually looked at what the humans had built. The gardens growing earth plants. The art showing human history. The families living lives that didn't revolve around serving the Council. They saw humanity not as workers, but as a civilization. One that had existed before the Council, and would continue after it. As the Council ship prepared to depart, Keiko sent a final message. We don't wish you ill. We hope you find a way through this. But we won't be the solution to your problems anymore. Goodbye, and good luck. The journey back to Council space was quiet. Each delegate wrestled with their own thoughts. Tharn finally spoke. We built our entire civilization, assuming certain work was beneath us. We found a species willing to do that work, and never questioned what would happen if they stopped. What do we do now? The Chthar asked. We learn, Seventh of Contemplation said, or we fall. Those are the only options. When they returned to Council space, they found the situation had worsened. 2 more stations had been evacuated due to system failures. A trade war had broken out between 3 species arguing over supply routes. Emergency services had completely broken down in several sectors. The Council held an emergency session. Tharn presented the delegation's findings. The humans would not return. The Council was on its own. Then we must learn to do the work ourselves, he declared. Every species will contribute. The Zeros will train warriors in engineering. The Methodians will teach their young to work with their hands. The Deep Reach will develop technology to work in other environments. All of us will learn to be more than our specializations. This will take years, someone protested. Decades. Then we'd better start now, Tharn said. Not every species adapted. Some withdrew from the Council entirely, unable to abandon their pride. Some colonies failed. Some stations were permanently abandoned. The great galactic civilization contracted, became smaller, humbler. But some species learned. Young Zaros trained in maintenance and took pride in keeping their stations running. Methodians, who had never touched physical objects, learned to repair systems with their own manipulators. Species that had refused to communicate began working together out of necessity. It was hard. It was humbling. Many failed at first. But slowly, gradually, the Council began to stabilize. Not at the level it had been. That might never return. But it survived. It adapted. It learned what the humans had tried to teach them all along. That all work has dignity. That survival requires adaptability. That civilizations built on pride collapse faster than those built on mutual respect. Seventh of Contemplation kept monitoring the human expansion. They were thriving. Sometimes she wondered if they were happy, if they missed the stars of Council space, if any of them regretted leaving. Then she reminded herself, they had made their choice, a hard choice, a painful choice, but ultimately a healthy one. They had chosen self-respect over being needed. They had chosen their future over the Council's past. And maybe, in a generation or two, if the Council truly changed, if it learned to value all its members equally, humans and Council species might meet again, as equals this time, as genuine partners. But that was for the future to decide. For now, humanity was free, and the Council was learning that freedom was something you gave, not something you extracted from others. In a small apartment on Luna, a child asked her grandmother, "Why don't we help them anymore?" The grandmother, who had spent 40 years maintaining Council stations, smiled sadly. "Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone learn to help themselves. They'll be stronger for it. Or they won't. Either way, it's no longer our responsibility to save those who never valued us." The child thought about that, then nodded. "We're building our own things now, right?" "Yes, sweetheart, our own things, for ourselves." Outside the window, Earth turned in space, blue and beautiful and free, and humanity looked not backward to what it had left behind, but forward to everything it would become.